I saw this on Twitter. It's John B. Waters of Fox News talking with the worst of the Trumps, Eric Trump. The ugliest, most brain dead. He's what I imagine like if like you just made paint chips into slurry for a children and like gave it to him in an IV. Like that's him.
Funny business now. Q, I guess this conspiracy deal on the internet. Twitter's basically just cracked down, eliminated about 7,000 accounts, 150 other 100,000 accounts are now in the crosshairs. Do you think that this is an attempt to kind of interfere in an election? Because, Q can do some crazy stuff with the pizza stuff and the Wayfair stuff, but they've also uncovered a lot of great stuff when it comes to Epstein and it comes to the deep state.
Q didn't release any information on Epstein. That was all journalists. Through like the New York Times and like the New Yorker that interviewed
people like blowing whistles on that too for a long in the show. She said like I was talking about this 10 years ago and they wouldn't let me air it. So Q
has nothing to do with any of that, and that's what kind of sent me on this. Like they in that same clip they also talk about Wayfair, and I'm sure you've heard of that goofy conspiracy theory.
Yes, changing the script on a fucking website
to traffic children.
Yes.
And I found out about something that happened in the 80s. A rumor started that the president of Procter & Gamble donated money to the Church of Satan. And this rumor, like, because it's the 80s, it's the satanic panic. The satanic panic starts in like the mid to late
daycare.
Yeah, like all that shit. Like so, like with the satanic panic happening in the mid to late 70s and like peaking towards the end of the 80s and then kind of slowly tapering off through the 90s. It's still happening in the 90s, but it's height at the 80s. These pamphlets start to circulate that the president donated money to the Church of Satan, which isn't true. But in the pamphlet, it said that he was on a TV show and said that, which is weird because you'd think like even back then, they would be able the Procter & Gamble did prove like we weren't on these shows. We haven't done like he hasn't been on any TV. This isn't a thing, but it's the 80s. The internet's not a thing, and people will believe even more. Like people believe anything now. You get a boomer on Google, they're going to tell you that giants existed and like look at these cool diagrams I've found of skulls and whatnot. So like the kind of conspiratorial mindset just goes back forever. And so I read the New York Times article from the 80s about that. That kind of details like not how silly it was, but just what Procter & Gamble had to go through because it was affecting their bottom line.
Oh, like, absolutely.
They had like 2 or 3 buildings like vandalized. They were at one point were getting 5,000 calls a day. With just angry Christian moms, screaming at them about it. One of the big things with the pamphlet is that Procter & Gamble's old logo was like a moon that looked like a man's face, and they called it the Man in the Moon logo. That the pamphlet said that logo was a satanic image, like based on like an old like satanic piece of art, which I was like, that's cool as hell.
That's awesome, like great,
but. Sadly, it wasn't true. And eventually they ended up changing the logo in big part because of this. Like, this thing was such a big deal in the 80s. They just, like, couldn't shake it. So here's some interesting information. Sociologist Jeffrey Victor released a book in 93 called Satanic Panic, in which he details the Satanic Panic through the 80s and its origin throughout history. So when we think of the Satanic Panic... or other panics like these, one of the key things is that children are being kidnapped.
Right.
And that's what's happening with QAnon right now. Like QAnon is just an extension of the Satanic Panic, but in the modern digital age. That at some point children are being either in the 80s it was kidnapped by Satanists to be sacrificed. Now they're being kidnapped by satanic pedophile elites.
Yes, politicians. Yes. And what gets me about the Pizzagate stuff, like you said, it's the same thing. It's a direct. Yeah. It just panders to this fear that evangelicals have, like this underlying.
Yeah, QAnon is very much an American evangelical conspiracy.
Yeah, like it's the epitome. They think that like it's who is it? Robert Kennedy? Who do they think it is? It's a Kennedy.
JF Kennedy Jr. That he faked his death.
Yes.
And spent the past 30 years trying to get that he saw Trump at one point before he died and knew that man will lead America. Faked his death, spent 30 years undercover to get Trump elected. That is...
I don't think Trump even knew he was be elected. In reality, I think he literally like stumbled upon this and was like, oh my God, it worked.
When he was asked, I think by Larry King maybe in the 80s, like, would you ever run for president? He's like, oh no, I might. Who knows? Maybe.
Maybe if Putin...
But if I did, I'd be the best.
I have no intention of running for president.
Do you have a vice presidential candidate in mind?
Oprah. I love Oprah. Oprah would always be my first choice.
So, like, the Jeffrey Victor guy goes on to say that the kidnappings being a common theme is also like an old folklore that, you know, like settlers in America had like a folklore of witches stealing children, like gold in the woods, you know, over in the Eastern Europeans, you know, goblins would steal your kids. That if you're a bad kid, somebody will take you away. This is like a very common thing throughout human culture. So, and that it shows during these times, people are fearing for their child's future as well as society's future. That this is like a larger, you know, clearly these things aren't real, but it's like indicative of something larger to the people that believe it. Anthropologist Shel Mulhern refers to this as the myth of the blood cult conspiracy. Naturally, these two flavors of panic overlap frequently. The Journal of Roman Studies explains that 2,000 years ago, in the days of the pagan Roman Empire, leading Romans believed that Christians ritually murdered in secret rites. Once Rome converted to Christianity, that same conspiracy and fear just went on to the Jews.
Yeah.
That conspiracy, that the Christians molesting and killing children goes over to the Jews. That becomes the blood libel story, which I've heard the term blood libel, but I didn't know what it was. And it's blood libel being an accusation that Jewish people use the blood of Christians in religious rituals, especially in preparation of Passover bread.
Holy shit. I did not know that.
Never heard of it, but I guarantee when I go to surf like the weird parts of like the Nazi-ish parts of 4chan, they'll probably be making jokes about it. Conspiracy theories like this arise during times of great social stress and anxiety as societies are in a transitory stage. Victor says that witch hunts, no matter how absurd, act as a general catharsis even when there is no result. Which, that got my brain ticking even more, because all these conspiracies, nothing really happens with them. There was no like satanic cult that was caught in the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, they arrested... There's a really good documentary about it. I think it was the daycare.
Yeah, they put those people in jail.
Yeah,
and
there was the people who owned it.
No proof.
And then they figured out like the kids who admitted to it, they were under hypnosis or whatever.
They were coerced more or less by the cops.
Yeah, and like the whole thing was just completely set up.
When you look at the daycare stuff too, what the kids say is insane. Because they're like, we went to use the bathroom and fell in the toilet, and then we killed a rabbit, and then we're on a hot air balloon. Like, what? You know?
That's the baby right there.
Right here?
It came out of her already.
What'd they do to the baby?
Then David took it and kept throwing it against the wall, and he killed it.
What did they say the devil would do to you?
They said that if we told that the devil would come and kill our parents, and he said that we wouldn't live to be the age 9.
And they had these things they called Spains.
Spains?
Yes, Spains. They stuck it up my butt.
Who stuck it?
David.
Your dad?
Ow, did it hurt.
But it fit I guess, I don't know, the 80s were fucking weird. Even when I was a kid in the late 90s, my dad was still talking. My dad's fervently religious, and he was very much I remember as a kid, him telling me, well, you know that like Satanists, they know how to do these, like, they know how to clean an area of any DNA so they'll never be caught when they kill children. And I'm like, Dad, I'm 8. Like, fucking stop, dog. Please don't.
Well, but yeah, so... Yeah, it's wild. I mean, what is it about the fear with really, they're always afraid of something. They're always the victim of like a potential thing that could happen to them.
Yeah.
No matter what. Like, what does that come from? Like, biblically, I'm curious.
I'm sure you could, well, especially with like the QAnon stuff, and I think like when you look at evangelicalism being, very much like it is an American thing. I think it's baked into the DNA of a lot of evangelical Americans. Not a victimization thing, but kind of like it's us against the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. My prevailing idea with most conspiracies, particularly like the QAnon stuff, is that with all conspiracies, there's a grain of truth in them somewhere. Mm-hmm. The descriptive elements of the conspiracy is taken to the fringes. So, like with QAnon, there are elite people in power that are sex trafficking minors because they're sex perverts. It's been proven with Epstein.
Yeah.
The thing is they have to tack on they're Satanists, they're demons, they're doing massive blood orgies. It's the Jewish cabal as a part of it. All these things, because it's really hard for a lot of people to just accept that power corrupts, because it's just some people get into power and it's not enough for them. They know they can get away with anything. They've always been able to get away with whatever. If they could just accept that and be like, okay, well, how do we move on from this point and get the people that deserve it? Because really there's far more victims of the satanic panic that's happened through like the past close to almost 40 years. With like when it started till now, there's more victims than there ever needed to be. Mm-hmm. Like how many people, like especially, I mean, any victim in my mind isn't worth, even if they did catch like one group of satanic cult leaders that were killing children. Think of all the people that went to jail. Think of the West Memphis 3 that spent how many years in jail?
Yeah,
the people from the daycare. With like the daycare thing, it's more or less theorized now that I think the son that worked at the daycare was like kind of slow, that maybe he touched one kid inappropriately. But what happened? The whole family got taken down. Mm-hmm. They had invested all their money into the daycare. They were literally like what's the word? Like a bougie daycare. Like rich people sent their kids there. Mm-hmm. They lost everything. And I'm sure if I like had my memory jogged, there's shit that's happened in the late 90s and in the early 2000s because it's never ended. Oh yeah. So he brings up witch hunts are cathartic, and like we clearly see that happen with tons of different styles of witch hunts. It's not always just satanic panic. But it made me think of how Trump uses the term witch hunt, and it's easy for him to do it because once again, sometimes there is a grain of truth in what conservatives are saying. Like with Trump, it really is like a liberal witch hunt. Like nothing happened with the Russia stuff. It just gave the conservatives fodder to be like, look, liberals are fucking crazy. Yeah, like they wouldn't let go of this.
Listen to this shit. Yeah.
And it's like, it's like frustrating because it's like, I wish Trump wouldn't use the word. But then, like, that was cathartic for liberals. Like, we got all of his people on the stand. And, like, they took down a few people. But, like, they didn't get Trump. Yeah, Trump's literally, have you ever seen Baby's Day Out?
No.
It's like an old movie with a little baby, and he gets into a lot of antics. Like he's like, at one point, I think at the end, he's in a construction yard, and he's like crawling across beams.
That sounds wild, though.
People are trying to catch him. It's like a slapstick kids movie.
Yeah.
Trump is like that baby. Like, he's just kind of like goofily like he's not some maniacal guy. Mm-hmm. He just happens to keep people in his proximity that'll take the fall for him. We saw people take the fall for him. Mm-hmm. I don't think like Trump is nearly smart enough at all to like work with Russia to rig an election. I don't think Trump ever wanted to win.
No,
so,
I absolutely agree. And that's the thing. A lot of people who were still, I will say, I understand people make mistakes, people fall for things in politics, whatever. I could see how people supported Trump outright in the beginning. If you have not flipped since then, you are not fit to be in fucking society. Because, like, what more proof do you need that this was a fucking mistake? Like, what? Like, I understand if you were duped into it in the beginning, but like I said, if you have not changed by now, I don't know what it would take.
Hey there, thanks for watching. This was just a short clip from the MK Ultra Orphans podcast. We hope to have full episodes up very soon. If you liked this, if you thought it was interesting or informative, or anything, drop a like, comment about conspiracy theories in the comments, or subscribe. Thanks for watching.